When the world plunged into the chaos of the Second World War, America faced a terrifying reality. Its once mighty Pacific Fleet lay burning at Pearl Harbor. Battleships that had symbolized U.S. naval dominance were destroyed or crippled in a matter of hours. But from the smoke of defeat, the U.S. Navy made a radical decision: to build not bigger battleships, but a new kind of predator, one that would rule the seas through speed, striking power, and reach. This predator was not made of brute armor, but of air wings, hundreds of aircraft that could strike enemies far beyond the horizon. The name of this beast would soon terrify the Japanese Navy: USS Enterprise CV-6. She wasn't just another ship. She was a moving fortress of death, intelligence, and precision. Launched in 1936, Enterprise was part of the new Yorktown-class carriers, originally designed for a much smaller navy. But by 1941, she had become the core of America's Pacific defense. Her decks could host over 90 aircraft, dive bombers, torpedo planes, and fighters. Yet what made Enterprise so deadly wasn't her size, it was her crew. Men trained to fight in chaos, to repair under fire, to launch counterstrikes even as the ship burned. By 1942, the Japanese had already crushed much of the Pacific. But Enterprise would become the symbol of vengeance, a ship so resilient and dangerous that the enemy gave her a name both fearful and respectful: the Gray Ghost. As one sailor once said, "If hell itself had a runway, the Enterprise would have landed there." And soon, that prophecy would be tested in the fiercest battles of the Pacific.
June 1942. The fate of the Pacific rested on a handful of U.S. carriers: Enterprise, Hornet, and the badly damaged Yorktown. Facing them was the full power of the Imperial Japanese Navy, led by Admiral Nagumo and his 4 massive carriers: Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, and Hiryu. The Japanese outnumbered the Americans, outgunned them, and had every reason to believe they would win. But what they didn't know was that the Gray Ghost was waiting. Using intelligence breakthroughs from code breakers, Enterprise's task force knew Japan's plans almost to the hour. On June 4th, her pilots launched into the dawn sky. Waves of torpedo bombers were slaughtered by Japanese Zeros, yet the Enterprise dive bombers, led by Commander McClusky, found their moment of destiny. With fuel running low, McClusky spotted a lone destroyer speeding north. He followed it and stumbled directly onto the Japanese fleet. Within minutes, Enterprise's SPD Dauntless bombers dived from 20,000 feet straight onto the enemy carriers. Explosions ripped through Kaga and Akagi. Flames shot skyward as entire flight decks vanished into fire. In one strike, Enterprise's squadrons changed the course of the Pacific War. 3 of Japan's elite carriers were destroyed, and the 4th was hunted down hours later. The Japanese Navy, which had ruled the seas for 6 months, never recovered. Admiral Yamamoto later wrote bitterly, "The tide of fortune turned at Midway." And at the center of that turning tide was USS Enterprise. From that day forward, every Japanese sailor in the Pacific would know her name. The Ghost had struck her first killing blow.
Victory at Midway made Enterprise legendary, but her true reputation, the most dangerous ship of the war, came not from the battles she won easily, but from the ones she barely survived. At the Battle of the Eastern Solomons, she took direct bomb hits that tore holes in her flight deck and killed dozens. At Santa Cruz, she was hit again and again, her elevators jammed, compartments flooded, and flames spreading fast. Other carriers might have withdrawn or sunk. Enterprise fought on. Her damage control teams, welders, mechanics, sailors with bare hands, patched steel with molten iron while under attack. Incredibly, while fires still burned below deck, her pilots were launching new strikes. One officer famously shouted, "We're not dead yet! Get those planes off!" Each time the Japanese reported her sunk. Each time she came back stronger. It was during this period that Tokyo radio gave her the name that would echo through the Pacific, the Gray Ghost. They called her that because every time they believed she was gone, she reappeared, bringing hell with her. No other ship in history took so much punishment and kept fighting. Enterprise's resilience became a living legend. Sailors across the Pacific whispered, "If the Enterprise is still afloat, the war isn't lost." By the end of 1942, she was the only operational U.S. carrier left in the Pacific, standing alone against the entire Japanese fleet. That's not just courage, that's destiny. By 1944, the war had turned. America's industrial power now rolled across the seas, but Enterprise still led from the front, spearheading raids from the Gilberts to the Philippines, from Truk Lagoon to Leyte Gulf. At Truk, Japan's Gibraltar of the Pacific, Enterprise's bombers and torpedo planes turned the once invincible base into rubble. Over 40 enemy ships were sunk or crippled in just 2 days. It was total domination, the kind of naval destruction the world had never seen. But Japan wasn't done. In 1945 came the most desperate and terrifying weapon of all, the kamikaze. Suicide pilots hurled their planes directly into U.S. ships. Enterprise was hit again and again by these human missiles. On May 14th, a kamikaze crashed into her flight deck, blowing a 20-foot hole and killing 14 men instantly. Yet within hours, the crew had contained the fires, cleared the wreckage, and prepared to launch aircraft again. A reporter on board wrote, "She's been bombed, torpedoed, and rammed, but she just won't die." Even as newer carriers joined the fleet, Enterprise remained the symbol of vengeance. Japanese soldiers and sailors alike feared her name. Wherever she sailed, destruction followed.
When the guns finally fell silent in 1945, USS Enterprise had fought in nearly every major battle of the Pacific War, from Pearl Harbor's first response to Okinawa's final strike. She earned 20 battle stars, more than any other American ship in World War II. Over 400 aircraft were credited to her squadrons, and her sailors saved thousands of lives. But glory doesn't always last. After the war, Enterprise was decommissioned. Her steel was old, her engines tired. Despite her service, plans to preserve her as a museum failed. By 1958, the most dangerous American warship of World War II, the Gray Ghost, was sold for scrap. Piece by piece, she vanished into history. Yet her spirit didn't die. Every U.S. Navy carrier since has carried her name forward. The modern nuclear-powered USS Enterprise CV-6 became another legend in her own right, carrying jets instead of propeller planes, but the same fighting soul. And now, a new Enterprise, CV-80, is being built, a direct descendant of the ghost that haunted the Pacific. As long as that name sails, the story of CV-6, the ship that refused to die, will live on. Because Enterprise wasn't just a warship. She was America's answer to defeat, and proved that courage can turn steel into something immortal.